What's up everybody, Nameless Co here today, and as you guys can see behind me, I've got my L300 Chamonix, and in today's video I'm going to be giving you guys the comparison of the L300 versus the L400. Now, I actually just recently picked up an L400, so we figured why not? Let's make the comparison video, because honestly when choosing a Delica it can be hard if you want to sacrifice comfort for style or driving for style. So without further ado, let me show you around my brand new L400. This is it. It's blue on silver. It's a Chamonix automatic. It got these cool wheels that that came on the van. Now this van was also brought to the US from Canada like my L300 was. That's one of the reasons why I found this one in the condition that it was in, is because it was on Vancouver Island. And coming inside here, as you guys can see, I got a seat cover on it right now, but it's got the beautiful Chamonix upholstery, very 80s you could say. And on the odometer, it has about 140,000 kilometers on it, which is super low, especially given the fact that it is a 1997 and it had been in the country or in North America since 2014. Coming around to the back, it's got this pretty cool, obviously those graphics can't beat them, but it's got this pretty cool 3-hitch, which you don't really see much in the US. You got some stickers and whatnot, some registration. It was a Rising Sun import, like I said, back in 2014. The tint is a bit faded. It's you know, there's overall it's a really clean car, but there is little bits of things here and there. Coming inside, you guys can see it's pretty nice back here. And then my favorite part, if you want to zoom out a little bit, is if you pull up the carpets or the floor mats, you can see the original Chamonix carpeting is in great condition. These curtains are also in great condition. It's like a, you can't really tell the color, but it's kind of like a sea green almost. Pretty cool. So yeah, that's my L400, just in a quick overview. We're gonna get more in depth once we start comparing both the vans. So let's get to it. So, as you guys just would have seen the last clip, the L400. Now, overall, the L400, it's a lot more of a bubble. The body lines are significantly more round, and you know, it honestly kind of looks like just a kind of a blob, like a little blob of van just driving down the road, and it's significantly more narrow than the L300. And some of the things that you guys might be considering when you're looking to get a Delica is, do you want to sacrifice performance for looks, or do you want to sacrifice looks for performance? And with the L400, you're sacrificing the looks for performance. Now, it is an automatic, so it is a bit slow, but it cruises 80 miles an hour on the freeway, and it's a lot more aerodynamic. And honestly, with that hood scoop, it's pretty fucking sweet from the front. So that's just overall the styling aspects of the L400. And I do like how the L400, at least my model, came with these running boards. Those are actually a bit rare to find on the L400s. So that's that. And then because it is a Chamonix and it has those yellow fog lights, that definitely adds a bit of styling to the front end of it. And then of course with these graphics, it definitely completely changes the look overall as a whole. As you guys know, my L300, it looks the same. Nothing's really changed too much. But what I love about the L300 most are the pronounced mirrors. Now, the L400 doesn't have the same mail truck mirrors that the L300 has. And honestly, you really can't beat them. I mean, they're just so distinctive, and no other van from this time, minus, I want to say, some of the Nissans and then the Mazda Bongos, had that same style of mirror. And another thing that's interesting, because these vans are actually both on the same exact tire size, they're both high roofs, and they're both short wheelbases. The L300 stands about an inch or two taller on the top end than the L400 does. And one more thing, they both have bull bars, right? but the L300's bull bar is a lot more pronounced, and it has a bit of a curve, you could say, on top, whereas the L400 is pretty much just flat all the way across. Taking a step inside of my L300, you guys can see I have my cot set up right here, and this is actually my camper. Now, I bought the L400 as a daily driver, but if you guys are looking at it from a livability aspect, you gotta see whether or not you want something that has a lot more space. Now, both the L300 and the L400 are short wheelbases, at least mine are. You can get I wanna say you can get an L300 in a long wheelbase, but I have not seen one in a long wheelbase, but I know the L400s are very common in the long wheelbase. So if you're gonna be getting an L400 and you wanna live out of it, definitely go for the long wheelbase route, because as is, the L400 right now is very, very cramped, and I don't know if I would want to camp out of it. Whereas my L300, even though it's a short wheelbase, it's still very spacious, and I'm 6'2", for instance. I know we got some questions on the channel. I'm 6'2", and yes, I have to have a hunchback, but honestly, I can still get changed, and I could, if I wanted to, I could, you know, be on my, I could just be on my knees, and I could be, you know, cooking something up, and I'm barely even having to like bend my neck if I'm on my knees, and it's really, really spacious, even though it is a short wheelbase. But like I said, if you're gonna be camping, one more thing, you must get a high roof. Now, I emphasize this for anybody of any height. The extra 2 to 3 inches doesn't sound like a lot, but it's gonna make a very, very big difference. The only downside is be careful on where you're going. As you guys would have seen in some other clips, I did hit my side of my roof on a tree, so I don't think that would have happened if it was a regular roof or whatever you want to call it. But those are just some things about the camping and the livability aspect of both of these vans. Talking about the off-road capabilities of these vans, I would like to say that the L400 takes the cake, merely because it has a central locking diff. However, on the L300, it doesn't even come with a locking differential unless it's a limited edition. I'm almost 100% sure that's true. However, on my L300, it also has a limited slip differential as well. Now, I don't know if the L400 has an LSD, but I'm pretty sure it does, given the fact that it does have a manual transfer case, and it has all the other goodies. As you can see, you got 2 high, 4 high, 4 high locking, 4 low locking. And it's cool because it's a central locking diff instead of individual locking diff, so that's pretty cool. And then if you come around to this side, you can see, or I guess you can see, probably might be too dark, but there is an indicator on the dashboard that shows if it's in 2-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive, and if the middle diff is locked. So overall, if you're looking for a purpose-built off-roader and something that's basically just ready to go out of the box, I would say probably get the L400. It's gonna treat you a lot better and just probably last a lot longer, because most L300s are older and they are a lot more beat than the L400s are. Coming over the front of my L400, you can't just help but smile when you see how cute this hood is. I mean, it's about, 5 feet by 2 feet, and has that cool hood scoop, which is actually functional, as you guys can see. We got the top mount Subi Gang intercooler. Now, both my Delicas are diesel models. However, what's special about these ones is because they're limited edition, they have 2 batteries. Now, what's important about having 2 batteries is that's double the cold cranking amps when you're starting these. And as you guys know, or if you don't know, diesels require a lot of energy to start. And oftentimes you can get stranded if you don't have a dual battery setup or a very large battery setup. But talking about performance-wise, the L400 makes about 30 or 25 or 30% more power and torque than the L300. But because mine's automatic, it doesn't reflect it as well as my 5-speed manual in the L300. Now, these motors, the 4D56 and the 4M40, are pretty much the same motor. As you guys can see, the turbo is mounted on the left, along with my L300, which we'll show you in another clip. But what's special about the 4M40 is it has a timing chain, which actually is a lot better because on the 4D56 it has a timing belt. So timing chains don't snap, they just make noise. Timing belts will snap and then your head goes. So that's nice about the L400. You don't have to worry about blowing a head unless your timing chain has never been replaced, which it should at least once in its basically lifespan. But other than that, I'd say that's probably covering everything on this aspect. Dipstick is mounted on the top, which is a kind of interesting placement, but you know, it is what it is. And then obviously the intercooler turbo. My 4D56 is non-intercooler. That's gonna help a ton to keep the EGTs down. But what's really cool about my L400 is it came with an Egr Delete, which you guys can see right here. We've got these two plates. There's a block off plate. An Egr is an exhaust gas recycle. That's what it stands for. And it basically just sends unused exhaust back, or used exhaust back into the motor instead of dumping it. And what happens when it gets recycled is it brings the engine temps naturally higher. Now this was done to basically better the environment and help save a little bit on fuel, whereas deleting the system, it's basically a valve. It helps a lot with keeping your engine temps down and actually making a little bit more horsepower, but not noticeable. So coming over to the L300, you might you might look at this van and be like, where's the motor? And honestly, you can assume it's underneath the seat, which it is, and it's held in by some latches, and you just pop it up like this, and there you go. There's the motor. You just put that latch on, and you're pretty much good to go. We did a video a month ago where I did my timing belt, my oil seals, radiator, and a bunch of other little maintenance things that I had to get done. And overall, this 4D56, which has 275,000 kilometers on it, is a beast. Now, I don't know to what extent all the other maintenance items like the diesel pump and the injectors and some of the turbo stuff has been done, but it pulls really strong. I mean, for a 25-plus-year-old van, I couldn't honestly ask for more out of it. And like I said on the L400, this is also a winter model, so it has those two batteries as well, which are very key for starts. And driving it around, you do notice the fact that you're sitting on top of the motor. You can feel the heat sometimes coming up from the motor, which is actually interesting. It's kind of like a natural heating seat, if you want to call it that. But in terms of actual performance, we've got manual transfer cases in both of the vehicles, which is a nice touch. And then obviously mine being a 5-speed, it's awesome, and it's one of the funnest things I've ever driven. And I've driven RSs and a bunch of other manual cars, and the fact that it has a mini truck, if you know, with the K cars and the K vans and all that, has the same transmission, cable actuated, very nice, goes into gear easily, doesn't grind, has a new clutch, which is amazing. All right guys, so we just got home now, and I'm gonna be giving you guys one last thing to kind of wrap up this video, which is driving characteristics. Now, I imported both of these from Canada, which meant I had about a 15.5 to 17 hour drive for each of them back home, which was pretty much all freeway driving. And because the L400 isn't automatic, it cruises at a lot better of an RPM. You can go 120 kilometers an hour right below 3,000 RPM, whereas the L300, because it's a 5-speed manual, which you would think could be geared longer, but because it's geared shorter, it cruises at 100 kilometers an hour at 3,000 RPM. So to be able to go 70 or 80 in an L300, you're gonna probably wanna go with the automatic. But if you don't mind it and you are, you know, being okay in the slow lane and getting relatively good mileage, then the L300 is a great choice. But overall, the L400 is a better highway car. Couple more driving characteristics that I'd like to add to this video is the turning radius comparison. So the L400, which I'm sitting in right now, has a very Volvo-like turning radius. Just to compare it for anybody that has driven a front-wheel drive car or a front-wheel drive Volvo, this L400 has a very similar turning radius. it's a lot harder to make a U-turn in a bigger spot than you would think, and I couldn't imagine what that long wheelbase is like. Now the L300 has a lot tighter of a turning radius, and it's a lot nicer, even though mine doesn't have power steering, but I'm assuming that the ones with power steering are very similar, or at least the same power steering as the L400, because I don't know why they would change it, and it looks, excuse me, it looks pretty much the same. But that just kind of covers the bases for the turning radius aspect of the drivability of these vans. Switching it up in the back of the Delica, now that I'm sitting in the very convenient foldable or stowable away benches, I'm going to talk to you guys about parking. Now, parking these things are pretty easy. Like I said, this kind of does piggyback off of the turning radius. This, I think, in general is easier to park on average because it is a bit smaller, and it's just nicer to kind of fit into certain spots. But they do both have the very modern 1990s backup cameras, which are these kind of interesting rear view mirrors. It's a rear view to the rear view, and you can actually look right down at your hitch. So honestly, one more thing, if you're going to be using these vehicles as tow rigs, they're pretty nice because you do have that mirror there, so you can kind of get right up to the hitch and just like look at it, make sure you're all good, and you can kind of monitor it while you're driving. If you have a bike rack back there, you can also see the rack and whatnot. And so I just really like that kind of mini mirror, you could say, just because I didn't really mention that yet. Last but not least, you know what they say, safety first. Now this L400 comes standard, or I want to say the limited edition models come standard with an SRS rated airbag. So if you guys do care about safety, go with the L400. It's just overall a lot safer of a vehicle. You have a front end, whereas the L300 you pretty much have nothing, and overall it seems like it's designed a lot better, and it's less of a tin can like most Japanese cars are. The last category in today's video is going to be the cool factor. Now the L300 definitely turns a lot more heads and just gets a lot more looks overall. When Zev and I were driving the L300 and the L400 around where we live, we noticed people oftentimes would pretty much break their necks at this thing, but wouldn't really even notice me. Now if you notice the L400 in the background, it's a lot sleeker, and it kind of does look like late 90s, early 2000s Mazda, like MPV or Sienna or Odyssey. So the L300 definitely takes the cake in the style and the appearance factor of things. So that's going to be a wrap for today's video. Thank you guys for watching another Nameless Co video, and last but not least, I hope you guys like the RHD quirky vehicles that we have on the channel, because there's definitely going to be no shortage of them in the coming months.